Oh, it's time to saddle up. We're heading back to Kansas City because Great Western Trail 2nd Edition is here, and it's time to find out, is it any better than this thing up here? The original Great Western Trail? Let's find out.
3, 2, 1, throw.
What's up, everybody? My name is Michael E. Murphy. I'm one half of Brothers Murph, and it's time for me once again to compare stuff and tell you what the hell you should buy. Sorta. I mean, I don't know. You do what you want with your money. It's your money. But I'll just tell you the differences between these, and you can make a determination like a grown-ass adult. So Great Western Trail is a classic, a modern classic, we'll call it, of the last 5 or so years. That's been quite the rage by Alexander Pfister, done by Eggert Spiel. Now Plan B is bringing it over here, handily on this side, and still, of course, Eggert Spiel elsewhere. This game is a classic. And the original cover, at least, has been something of much ridicule. I don't know. You know, people are like, dang, you're so good, but why? What happened? And I'm not going to get into the ins and outs. Someone worked really hard to make this cover, and I don't want to trash that person. But it's not the greatest, and it certainly does not live up to the game that's within. If this was a don't judge a book by its cover, this is probably the best example. Don't judge this by the Frankenstein monster on the front, the trio of terrifically bleak men. There's a good game in there. So now in the Great Western Trail 2nd Edition, it's gotten a humongous aesthetic and I would say overall production upgrade. Things have been brought up in a significant way, both aesthetically in terms of playability with the pieces and things like that. It's been upgraded and I think brought to a more modern what we expect from board games. It's only been like 5 years since this came out, but a lot has changed, I think, in what we expect out of games. And the 2nd edition of Great Western Trail certainly seems to play to the most modern audience that we are and make sure that the game kind of lives up to those expectations. So, as you can start to see some pictures roll through, the main thing with this new version is aesthetic changes. There's not much that's different from the how you play the game. It's virtually identical. I mean, there's things I was like, man, this is different, and then it just turns out I never played with that or never noticed that in the original game, but it's not actually new. I just don't pay attention. But the aesthetics have changed. The overall kind of color of the game, starting with this cover here, and kind of it has a nostalgia to it. It really evokes kind of like the old depictions of the West from like old Hollywood and stuff like that. To me, like this is what I think of like old-timey, romanticized visions of like what the West was, what the West meant. This seems to really fit that look, that Americana-driven version of the West. And now you have it on the cover and it goes straight through onto the board. Now with the original Great Western Trail, I actually didn't mind the board that much. I never noticed it as like lacking necessarily. I thought it was fine. And when I first saw pictures of the new board, I was kind of like, oh, I don't even think that's really an upgrade and everything. And then as I started playing, my mind very much changed on that front, where I'm like, I really love that from the cover, you kind of go into the picture, as it were, and you have the same exact colors, the greens and the kind of rust reds, the kind of Utah, Red Rock, Sedona look goes through on the board all the way through. So it feels very thought through. I guess the through line is complete here. There's no disconnect from the cover on down. And that's something that I really, really appreciate. I think it's just fantastic. Like, it doesn't make the game any better necessarily. Like, the game is what the game is mechanically and was always great. But it kind of fills it out. It feels deeper. It feels richer, literally richer now with color and that kind of pastel almost look. I think it's fantastic. It looks very much kind of hand painted. And it works for me big time. I really like the look. I didn't mind the look of the old one, but I think this is still a significant upgrade. And that just, to me, is like kudos to Chris Quilliams on the art for the new version. It's just that much better when really a lot of the original Great Western Trail is not that bad looking. One area where it does get a significant upgrade is with your player boards, which now in this version are dual layer, which is something that I think we have come to expect from publishers. We want games that are built to kind of last. You know, cardstock just isn't really going to cut it anymore because they wear down, they wear out, you end up replacing it with other stuff. It kind of puts the onus on me, the consumer, to like make my game future-proof. And I'm like, well, I should have a product that doesn't require future-proofing. Like if you want to upgrade stuff and everything, feel free. Like in the original Great Western Trail, I got canvas bags for all the level 1, 2, and 3 tokens. I like that this version just comes with canvas bags for that. It feels super thematic. It feels the material is right for the type of game and the era that you're playing in. I think that's wonderful. Things like that. The dual layer boards help a lot of the kind of, oh, I knocked my board, I shifted my discs around, now I can't remember what I've already unlocked, what I haven't, because throughout the game, as you make deliveries, you're unlocking better and better kind of stuff on your player board to do. So it is very important that those do not shift around. Like you could really lose track of a lot that way. It could be pretty devastating. So having a dual layer board now solves that problem. I'm like, okay, good. I don't have to worry about the accidental knocks. That's not something I've always minded so much in the past, but I do mind more and more. And in a game like this, I think like if you mess up those discs, it could be a bummer, like a significant problem to try to solve. So I really dig that. I think the look of the cows here are really fantastic as well. And I love that there's more representation on those tiles. We now have a female carpenter, we have a black engineer, we have more representation of the people that lived in the United States at the time. And I think that's wonderful. And I love that the backgrounds behind them all are really colorful. Again, every time there's a chance to add some richness of color, add some pop. They seem to have done that right from the cover, again, on down into the game. It looks like you just dive into the cover and now you're in the world. So let's get down to it, talking about which of these should you get. Now, eventually, like the second edition will be the only one that exists. So this is sort of like a limited debate topic. Like it won't be a topic you can debate forever because eventually it'll just be these moving forward. But for now, there probably will be older copies of Great Western Trail and the expansion, which this does not have the expansion yet. That's something that I think they misstepped on. I would have loved to see a Great Western Trail kind of big box with the expansion to start off this series. We didn't get that. I get your business. You're trying to make money, and it does cost money to produce these things. So I'm not going to fault folks for trying to make $1 on their game, but it would have been cool. I would have happily paid more for this to get that kind of bundle. That would have been sweet. But should you get this anyway, even if it doesn't have that expansion, is there anything new in this one? There are a couple little things. Again, largely the game is identical. It is what the game is. It's just Great Western Trail. It's not trying to be anything else. It's a great game. There isn't much need to change things. One thing they do add are exchange tokens, which are something that the expansion for Great Western Trail introduced. And then these little tokens you can get outside of your buildings and things and make actions of, and you can exchange your cards around. You can draw and discard cards outside of making use of those actions from buildings and things. I think that's a nice touch. I think it's something that should absolutely just be in the base game because it gives you just a chance at making your hand a little better before you go to Kansas City. You're not going to get a lot of those in the game, but you do have the chance to get a couple maybe, and they can be really a nice just bit of flexibility if you're really stuck with a bad hand. You might get a better hand, you might not, but you have a chance to at least go for it, right? So that's something I really like. And then there's a variant you can play in the new version with the Simmental cows that actually kind of you raise the cattle. So when you get them, they're a level 2 breeding value and they're a calf. And then when you go around to Kansas City, you'll trade in your calves for heifers. And then when you go back around, if you have a heifer, you'll trade them in for a full-fledged cow. And they both become stronger in terms of hand value, and they're also worth more points at the end of the game. That's something that I think is super cool. I love the idea of raising cattle. It makes me wonder about the series of Great Western Trail that they're gonna do. Maybe in Argentina or New Zealand, maybe they go fully into that of like, you're gonna raise cattle and throughout time you upgrade the same cards over and over or something. I would love to see something like that where it's not just you're getting different cattle, but you're actually working and raising cattle up through time or something. I think that'd be really neat. So that's a variation on this game that I'll just always play with. It doesn't add much to the game in terms of complexity. You can grab those cows or not. And if you ever do, you just simply swap them out. There's not a whole lot of different stuff. They don't act differently than the rest of the cows other than they upgrade themselves. I think that's super cool. The biggest thing this version adds is a solo mode. An official solo mode in the box, AI bot that you can play against and win, or if you're me, lose horribly to. And that's something that doesn't exist in the first one. Again, the difference 5 years makes. Solo games and games with solo modes were definitely around 5 years ago, but now they are so expected. You really, if you're coming out with a big, like, A title, you need to have a solo mode. Like it's almost a must. And really, if you can do it, not every game works for it, but if you can do it, you probably should because it's going to help you with your sales. This game comes with a good solo mode in it, and I really appreciate that. I like it. I played it. We're going to do a video all about how it functions and what we think about it fully. But the preview is that I like it, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, and you can solo that coming up. Okay, the final question. Should you get this? Should you get this? Should you get this? Should you get this? Listen, if you have the original Great Western Trail, and especially if you have that and the expansion like we do, should you then grab this version? That's a hard one. First of all, I got to be perfectly full and honest with you. Full disclosure, Plan B sent me this game. I didn't have to go get it myself. I didn't have to throw down those dollars for it. So I'm not the right person to ask, first of all. And second of all, what money means to different people, how you like to go about collecting your games is very different from person to person. So I would, if it was my dollars going to this, I would probably do a little bit of a wait and see approach, simply because this is the start of a series of 3 different Great Western Trails. We have Great Western Trail Argentina, then New Zealand, that are going to bring some differences to the game while keeping, I think, the heart of it all the same. We don't know what those differences will be. And I know, like, on a collector's side, I'm going to want all 3 beautiful covers all next to each other because that's the part we've seen. They look great. And I'm like, oh, it's going to be a nice little series right there. I'm very intrigued by that. But if they're 3 identical games, then I'm like, well, that's a lot of money for just a picture. I need to know what's going on inside the cover. So if you have the original, and especially if you have that with the expansion for this one will not come out for a while, I would probably wait to see what's coming down the line. The next version is supposed to come out next summer, COVID willing, of course. I would probably find out like what's going on in Argentina. Am I interested in collecting this as a series, and then make my determination from there. But certainly, while these 2 kind of coexist for a little while, even if this one is around, I would just get the new one because it looks that much better. It does come with that variant, and it does come with a solo mode. The look of this is incomparable. It is such a better production in here than here. There's no comparison. If you have this one and you think you're going to get this, maybe wait for a sale or something. Once that kind of, if copies are around for a while, you catch a sale, grab the new one then. I feel like you can wait just because the gameplay is largely the same. Like they're minor changes. It's mostly aesthetic. So if you have all this, you're not really missing a lot other than that little variant you can play with. And you can probably wait and see what's coming down the line and if you want to get the series. That's how I'm going to approach it moving forward. But shouts out to Plan B for sending this to me to take a look. I really appreciate it. And I do realize that I live a lucky life and I didn't have to make that financial decision. So that's something I leave for y'all. But I will say that I really, really love this new version. It just looks, it matches the game that's in there. Mechanically, what you're playing with, this matches that in look. And I think that's important. I think it's important that, you have something that feels great and looks great. It's like you taste when you eat with your eyes as well. Let's engage all the senses here. So this does so much better of a job of that, and it really lives up to the game that's within that. Great Western Trail is, again, I call it like a modern classic. I think it's going to be around for a long time, certainly now with a whole series of these games coming out. So that's my thoughts on Great Western Trail, the new edition, 2nd edition. What do you think of the new edition? Does it look good to you? Does that look interesting? Do those changes, would that be enough for you to buy the game again? Does this now make you want to get into the game because was the cover holding you back? Let me know all these things in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I think this looks beautiful. I think this game will serve you just fine until we find out more about the series. If you're wanting to wait and see, I think it's a very fine approach moving forward. But this gives me a lot of hope and promise for the next games to come. So that's it for me, everybody. I'm Mike Murphy. Thank you so much for giving me some of your time. I really appreciate it. That's it. That's all I got. So howdy, get on out, get her done, and I'll see you in the next one.